Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to our webinar this morning on opening hospitality businesses in a safe way. So if we can start by introducing ourselves as members of the panel. So I'm Carl Battersby, I'm Strategic Director for Economy and Infrastructure. Councillor McBride.
Peter McBride, Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member responsible for regeneration town centre development.
Okay, Rachel.
Hi everyone, I'm Rachel Spencer-Henschel. I'm the Director of Public Health for Kirklees.
Okay, Sue.
Hello, good morning everybody. I'm Sue Proctor and I'm the Service Director for Environment, which includes the responsibility for public protection.
And Matthew.
Morning everybody, my name is Matthew Chapman and the Huddersfield Bid Manager.
Okay, so this is our panel this morning. So firstly, thank you to people that have either already submitted questions to us or tuning in today and submitting things through to us. Really appreciate your time. We hope you find this session useful this morning. It's the start of a dialogue rather than the end of one, so clearly you've got our contact details. If you need to follow up anything after the meeting, that's absolutely fine. We're hoping we'll get lots of questions through. If we run out of time, then we will post those answers on the council's webpage, so you can get the responses to those, and again follow up if you need further conversations. So we hope we find this really useful today. As a council, it's really important to us that we help the economy restart, and our town centres are crucial to that, and that's why as a council we're investing so much money on a range of regeneration plans in our town centres. So this isn't just about Huddersfield today, this can be about any centre or any business across the district, so we'd welcome people actually from other areas of Huddersfield rather than just Huddersfield and Dewsbury to put forward questions for us. So to kick things off this morning, we've got a number of questions that have already come in. So what I propose to do is go through those and provide some answers to those, and hopefully while we're doing that, some new questions will appear and we can field those as possible. So first question that we've got today is will those who regularly refuse or flout social distancing rules be put on the DISC system, the DISC system? So Sue, do you want to lead off on this one?
Yes, I can do, yes. So obviously we are working very closely with the police at the moment and looking at how we can safely introduce the reopening of the hospitality. And we know that not everything will be going as smoothly as we would want. So we have already received some complaints from members of the public who are not happy with certain hospitality businesses as they've opened. And with all complaints, we will follow up on these and we will act on these. This is a significant health issue that we're managing through at the moment, and we can only prevent the spread of the virus if we follow the guidance laid out by the government. Those who flout the rules will see an increase in cases associated with their businesses and their establishments, and this may result in them having to close their premises, and we have seen that on occasion across the UK. Their staff may well become ill and there might be a wider lockdown, and clearly no one wants that. And I'm sure that the public will start to vote with their feet should premises not comply with the regulations that we are putting in place. And the council will and the police will continue to ensure that social distancing is complied with. DISC, as we know, is an app-based system for sharing intelligence on people who cause problems in the town centre, either in day or night. It's a controlled process and the access input is controlled by the police. The DISC system wasn't really designed for the was designed for the persistent levels of antisocial behaviour or crime, and failure to comply with social distancing doesn't meet these requirements. So we wouldn't be using the DISC system for this in particular, but we would be visiting premises and having discussions with managers and landlords.
Okay, thanks, Sue. That's helpful. So second question we've got is, I've been to numerous restaurants to see how procedures are being implemented. In my restaurant, I've told my staff not to wear gloves, but told to wash sanitised hands between each task and provided plenty of sanitation points. In all the restaurants I've been in, staff are wearing gloves and are not changing them between tasks, i.e. clearing plates and glasses, then serving other table food. What's the best practice, gloves or regular hand washing and sanitation? Rachel, do you want to cover that one?
Yes, absolutely. I personally, and very much from the guidance perspective, would not advocate the use of gloves. Certainly regular hand washing is what is going to kill this virus, and that for 20 seconds, and equally using alcohol hand gel if you cannot access hand washing. The risk with gloves is twofold, really. One, you tend to lose that dirty hand feeling, so the inclination to wash your hands isn't there. But equally, if you've got gloves on, you can have a false sense of security by having gloves on, that it's somehow protecting you. But in reality, if you come into contact with someone or something where the virus is there and you touch it with your gloved hand and then you touch your face or another person, the virus is just transmitted anyway. So there is no benefit whatsoever to wearing gloves. So definitely regular sanitation and cleaning of surfaces is going to be the key.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thanks, Rachel. So there's another one here for you, I think. So this is for NHS track and trace. I've set out zones to stop mixing of staff. Is there a positive test from one of our diners? Would all our staff have to self-isolate, or does the segregated zones offer enough protection to remove the need for back of house to self-isolate? I think a really good question, that one. Okay, Rachel, do you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, sorry, Carl, it's just you didn't say me, but then I thought, well, it's obviously me, isn't it? So how we've approached this in things like schools is to create that concept of zones or bubbles. And what that does is it's able to manage your risk going forward. So if you are in contact with someone for a period of time under 2 meters, then you may be a contact. So trying to keep the right mitigation in place. And if it can't be 2 meters and it's 1 meter plus, making sure you've got the mask on and the other mitigations that you need. If you do that, you wouldn't necessarily be a contact. So it won't be a one size fits all this, and there'll be a conversation with you about, as a business, in case of a positive test, where we can understand where your staff have been. And so for me, the really important thing is to keep records so you can understand where staff are working, try and limit the staff's moving between different segregated areas, so that actually, if you know that that positive case was largely in one zone, so sat at a particular table, for example, if you're having a meal, and you know which staff were serving near that table, then you can hopefully then mean you wouldn't need to close your business. You might just need to send that group of staff home if they were a contact. NHS Test and Trace need as much information as we can provide, so that it's in our interest to collect that data as much as we can in terms of where our staff has been to protect them.
Great, thanks for that. And just following on from the question that was raised earlier around gloves, we've had some people come forward as well, ask questions about face masks, which I know is something that people are very interested in. So could you just give us your view from a sort of public health perspective around where they should be worn and what the benefits of them are?
Yeah, face coverings and face masks are different things. I suppose that's the first thing to say. So when you see people in NHS establishments wearing face masks, and they will be particular clinical masks that work with the situations that they're in. The current advice from the government is that face coverings, which isn't a mask, it's face coverings that you can either make or buy yourself, are to be worn if you can't maintain 2 meter social distancing. Now, there's been many studies about whether this has a significant impact or not. And I think, in my view, it is another tool in the toolbox that will help to mitigate the spread of the virus. What it does is it protects others from you. So if you think about you having a face covering on and you potentially having the infection, by wearing it, you're protecting others from you. So the more people wear it, the more multiple protection that is across so my view would be face coverings definitely if you cannot maintain the 2 meter, and they are a lot more important when you're indoors rather than outdoors, because outdoors gives you much better protection.
Okay, that's great. Sue, I think this next one, if you can answer this one. So the question is, it's very important that we prevent a second wave. All businesses are doing our bit. However, after going to a large chain pub in Cleckheaton, the track and trace is implemented by a form that a customer has to fill out. This is not enforced as a compulsory measure, and practically nobody was filling them out, and staff were not enforcing it. I went with 4 other people, and none were asked or had filled in the form. and there is no record of our visit. With all the hard work that all businesses are putting in to prevent any second wave, what will be done for business looking after their bottom line as opposed to the nation's safety?
And this is a difficult situation because there are a lot of businesses and there are a lot of different practices, but Kirklees Council Public Protection Officers are continuing to advise a large number of businesses regarding the COVID-19 controls that need to be in place, and we will be considering enforcement action if these controls are not being implemented strictly or strongly enough. And so we are strongly advising businesses to take customer contact details to assist with the NHS test and trace, as Rachel has just outlined the importance of. And this will enable us to identify anyone who may become in contact with someone who tests positive for COVID-19. But obviously we are reliant on information coming to us where there are problems. So if this is a particular circumstance, then we would welcome that information coming into us as an organisation.
Great. And just following on from that, Sue, another question is coming about what details do I have to collect from customers, and what should I do with them if I become aware that a member of staff or customer tests positive for COVID? So do you want to cover that one?
Yeah, and it can appear quite complex, and there is a lot of information on both our website, the Kirklees Council website, and on the government's COVID website. So you can reference this information if you need to. But the details that you should be keeping, firstly, concern your staff. So you should be keeping a record of the name of staff who work on the premises with their contact number, so that you can pass that on if you were requested to by the NHS test and trace, and a record of the dates and times that the staff were working. And if you follow the guidance that Rachel was outlining earlier about understanding the zones that people are working in within your establishment and the tables that they're serving, that you keep a record of that information, so that if one of the customers does test positive, that you can actually potentially isolate that down to one or two members of staff who've had an interaction with them. You also will need to collect information on your customers and visitors. So that would be the name of the customer, either on an individual basis or taking the lead member if it's a group. So if it's a group of up to 6 people, or a family group, then if you take one member's name, but you need to know when they came, the arrival time if you can, possibly the departure time if there's a booking system so that you book people out, but their contact details, so their telephone number, and then a record of the customer interaction with the members of staff. And also, if you're doing bookings for tables, it is really helpful to have a plan of the table numbers, and then we can see then if there was an interaction between those tables as well. And then that's the level of information that you need, but you also need to be aware of GDPR, and that you need to manage that information in a safe way, so that you don't share that with anybody and everybody. That is specifically for the purpose of test and trace contact.
Right. So Sue, what happens if people refuse to give the business owner their details? So they approach them, they ask them, and they say, "I'm not doing that to you." What's the response that the business should give?
Well, then it becomes absolutely your decision whether or not you admit that customer to your premises, because in effect that customer is then placing your business at risk, because if there was an issue of a COVID case being diagnosed and you can't contact the customers who have been in contact with that, there is a risk that your business will have to close. So it's very important that we try to ensure that you are COVID secure and that your customers and your staff are. So what you're trying to do is protect not only your customers, but also your members of staff. And if someone who has visited your pub or a member of staff has tested positive, it's crucial that we're able to contact those who are most affected and can be contacted quickly. So you should reassure customers that the information is only kept for 21 days and that you'll only use it for the purposes of test and trace. And after that 21 days, you will ensure that it's destroyed securely. And if you need any more information on this, as I've said, there is government guidance on this, and the links are available on our website, but also on the government website.
Thanks, Sue. That's really helpful. I know that following the changes the government have announced, when I think we started with quite clear messages around 2 meters and social distancing, there's been the recent change, obviously, to meter and what that means. So Rachel, it'd be really useful to give a bit of a flavour of what actually does 1 meter plus mean. Are you there,
yes.
Rachel?
Yes, sorry, thanks, Carl. I was just getting off mute. It is. I can see how sometimes this is really difficult to follow, because 1 meter plus, it's easy and slightly tempting to think that just means 1 meter. But what it means is the plus is the additional mitigating measures. So that might be screens, if that works in terms of the business, side to side or back to back seating, increasing ventilation, or as we've talked about, face coverings. It doesn't just mean that you should just stick to 1 meter. I've always found this quite difficult, because it's actually quite hard to judge what 2 meter or 1 meter is. And I think that the natural tendency of people is to probably be slightly less than 2 meters when we were in that phase. So that's why the mitigating measures are so important. So I think there's options available to you as a business in terms of what works best for your business. So I would advise having a conversation with our teams in terms of what might work for you in terms of that increased mitigating measures.
Thanks, that's helpful. And I know another thing that's caused some people confusion is this concept of the bubble and households and what that means when you're operating a business. So Sue, just can you clarify that for us in terms of how many groups of people can be inside and how many outside?
So there is a lot of guidance, and you're right, Colin, that there is quite a lot of information around what entails a bubble and what is a support bubble, and there is a more flexibility in that sort of the numbers of types of people that you can meet with now in public, and that's to help support us get back to a more normal way of working and to enable, you know, family groups to meet up together in public spaces. So you can now meet in groups of up to 2 households. So, and a household can include anybody who is in your support bubble. So where we have a situation where a single adult household can now meet with another household and become a support bubble, they would be able to meet with another family group within a hospitality environment in any location, either public or private, indoors or outdoors. And when you're outside, you can continue to meet in groups of up to 6 people from different households. So that's yourself plus 5 other household individuals. But it's important to recognise that when you're out and you're in that group of 6 individuals, that's basically your bubble for the evening. What we are recommending, or what the government guidance is that you do not move from one group of 6 to another group of 6 to another group of 6. You need to be almost socially isolated within that group of people, within any environment that you're in at the moment.
Is there a rule about distancing within those 6? Are they subject to any further distancing?
Yes, social distancing applies throughout.
Unless it's your household members.
Unless it's your own bubble, yeah.
Yeah.
If you're in a group of 6 and they're from different households, then the expectation of the 2 meter social distancing is still there.
Yeah, I can understand why people have struggled with these concepts and found it somewhat confusing. So thanks for bringing a bit of clarity to that, Sue. We've had a number of people as well ask us around staff and shift patterns. So be useful if you could sort of cover that off. Is there a sort of an optimum way that people should do this? So Sue, can you pick that one up?
Yeah, there's definitely advantages to putting staff into teams in shifts to help restrict the number of workers interacting with each other. And that's something that we of Kirklees Council have been very mindful of when we've been operating our frontline services. So almost creating work bubbles for people to be operating in, so they're working with the same people. This is important so that if a staff member becomes positive with COVID-19, there are likely to be fewer other members of staff that would be affected and be required to self-isolate. So obviously, as a business, that's really important for you to be able to manage the impact of any positive tests for COVID-19. If we had a situation where everybody worked with a positive case, so if you didn't have work bubbles and everybody was interacting with each other, then those colleagues are all deemed to be contacts, and it's possible that you may not be able to open due to the lack of staff available to work during a period of time. So it's very important that you're able to manage that contact between your staff as much as you manage the contact with the customer.
Yeah, and I think this is equally applicable to whether it's a hospitality business or not, isn't it? In terms of those arrangements.
It's any business.
So I'm just going to cover the last technical question, and I'm going to sort of open up, I think, for others to comment. So before we get on to questions again, so we've had a number of questions around table bookings and whether you actually have to have a system in place, and some businesses, I think, wanting to say, well, can I run my business without having bookings in place? Do you want to cover that one, Sue?
Yeah, and we have seen a mix. So obviously we've been working with a lot of businesses across Kirklees, and we are seeing different approaches to how people manage the number of customers that they have, but also how the customers come to their business. So it's entirely up to each individual. So it's entirely up to you whether or not you allow customers in by a pre-booking system. It's not compulsory. However, there are a lot of advantages to doing a pre-booking system. We would say that it enables you to collect contact tracing information before the customer arrives. So you're able to do that either via online bookings or telephone bookings. And it may help you to keep good records of which customers were located on which tables. You can also provide customer information advice on the procedures that you've got in place before they come in. So it's that opportunity to reinforce the regulations that we are all bound by at the moment, which is that, the maximum 2 households inside, the requirement for social distancing, the contactless payment, the social distancing from staff, and the recommendation is that people remain seated throughout the visit. It also possibly allows you to manage the time that people are within your establishment. So maybe have a 2-hour booking. People can extend that, but actually that maybe allow you to allow more customers in on a more regular basis. But it also allows you the opportunity to avoid having that queuing system outside. The downside of not having a booking system is that you'd need to probably do a lot more work on the night when people arrive. So you would have to collect contact information as they arrive, and that could be far more time consuming when you're busy. And the other key issues would be you would have to have a good system in for managing queues. This is critical to managing how many people you have on your premises at one time, and to make sure that people are social distancing in the queue is often difficult, as is managing behaviour. And this is likely to require a permanent member of staff just doing that during the evening.
I know, and so that's really helpful. I mean, these are very difficult things to manage, and that sort of balance between people being able to come out, enjoy themselves, support a business, but making sure they do so safely is a crucial one. I just at this point I want to bring you in, Matthew, because I'm conscious you've not had a chance to comment yet, and some people listening to this won't know what a business improvement district is. So it'd be useful if you could summarise what that is and maybe some of the things you've been doing in Huddersfield to support businesses to reopen safely.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Cal, and thank you everyone else for the comments. That's really, really useful for me and the businesses within Huddersfield. So Huddersfield BID, the BID stands for a Business Improvement District. And what that is, it's where businesses come together as a non-for-profit organisation to pay an extra levy to improve the area in which they trade within. The BID, it's got 4 key aims. So the first key aim is promoting a lively Huddersfield. The second key aim is creating an accessible Huddersfield. The third key aim is a safe and attractive place to be. And the fourth key aim is a great business, leisure and cultural offer. It's very much business led, and it's a defined area pretty much within the ring road of Huddersfield, but it deviates slightly for the university and the leisure centre and the retail park. And as I said before, it's businesses paying an extra levy to improve the area in which they trade within. A BID, it adds additionality on top of what organisations such as Kirklees Council and the police already deliver. And I think one of the things that one of the positives, should I say, that's come out of COVID-19 is there's been some great relationships built with Kirklees Council, the police, businesses, and it's created a really good community and a kind of forward way of thinking. So it's, yeah, I would say that's one of the positives. I think some of the things that we've introduced a street ambassador team, that each business within the Huddersfield bid area has a dedicated street ambassador to visit them, collect opinions, but that team's also the extra eyes and ears on the street. So if there's any issues going on, they're linked into the CCTV, they're linked into the police, and they're getting things reacted to on a more proactive basis. They're also the friendly welcoming team on the street, so they're offering directions. It's a really vital time where some students might be coming back to the university, visitors might start coming back to the town. They can hand maps out, they can offer that extra bit of advice on where to eat, where to drink. They're at the moment handing advice on social distancing. Quite similar, we've got an evening ambassador team. Sue mentioned about the queuing systems and the challenges that's kind of around the evening economy. That team they're again the friendly, welcoming presence on the street, but they're also there to assist the police and assist the security teams, just to try and enable that process to be a little bit easier around social distancing and the queuing systems. And that the final couple of things the final three things I'll mention that we've introduced just recently is we've introduced a dedicated destination website called Hello Huddersfield. So that's very much about celebrating what Huddersfield is good for, what we can celebrate, the food and drink, the arts and culture, the heritage, quirky blogs of all the good things around the town. As well as that, a Loyal 3 app. So that's very much for businesses to get involved, to put deals on there, competitions on there, interactive trails on there, so that there's offers out there for the community to come back into the town in a safe and confident manner. And finally, one of the things that we've just put out there this week is there's actually a free track and trace app out there that, understandably, it's not for everybody, because not everybody's customer base is kind of has a smartphone and is into the kind of the digital world. But it's a really easy process for businesses to do, where on the front of their door there's a QR code. If you've got a smartphone, you literally open your camera, scan the QR code, and your set details linking to a third party that looks after all those details for you. It's GDPR compliant, and they safely and legally remove those details for you after 21 days. So it kind of takes that extra strain away from businesses, you know, they've got all kinds of things to worry about at the moment, and it's just an extra option out there for businesses if they wanted to undertake that option.
Great, that's really helpful. Thanks, Matthew. And some people will be watching this, I think, and some people may come about what, at the risk of sounding like Monty Python, what have the Romans ever done for us? Sort of what have the council ever done for us in terms of helping the town centres open and support? And I know a lot of work's been ongoing, but I thought it might just be useful to summarise some of the things we have been doing and some of the resources we put in place. So, Sue, do you want to lead off on that? Because you cover all our sort of environment and regulation staff and frontline services. So if you could start giving you a bit of your perspective about what we've done and some of the things we're considering.
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you, Carl. And we've heard a lot of the questions have been very much around, you know, the safety of customers and the safety of staff during the opening up of the hospitality sector in particular. And the Kirklees Public Protection Service have been working really hard with the businesses across Kirklees throughout the pandemic lockdown to ensure that all of those businesses that could operate had the best advice and support available to protect their workers and their customers. But the reopening of the hospitality business sector has been a huge step forward for the government's recovery programme, and it's something that's marked a step change in where we are on this journey. It's something that's been long awaited by a lot of businesses and customers, and has given many people the opportunity to get a little bit more normal now. But it's also one of the most challenging aspects of the easing of lockdown that we've seen so far. Because of this, the public protection services, including environmental health, pollution, noise and control, food safety and licensing, have been proactively contacting pubs, restaurants, cafes and clubs for a number of weeks now to talk through the government guidance and the requirements to ensure their safe opening. We can't forget that this is not a return to where we were before lockdown. It's very different, and we're still living through the COVID pandemic. And if we don't manage this properly and responsibly together, then we could see a return to lockdown situations either locally or nationally. There's a huge amount of information and guidance available to all businesses and to the hospitality sector in particular, both on the Kirklees website and also on the government's COVID website. And to support this information, the Public Protection Services have been working together to contact as many businesses as possible over the past few weeks. We visited venues for socially distanced face-to-face meetings and walk around their premises to discuss operations that they could put in place. We've phoned business managers and landlords. Where we've had email details, we've also provided information and reproducible graphics that businesses can use. And we've written to over 1,400 individual businesses to ensure that you've all received and continue to receive the most up-to-date and relevant guidance on how to reopen safely and to continue to operate safely in what are very difficult conditions. And I must confess, this at times has been very challenging. As we've seen, the government has often released the detail on big ticket announcements late in the day. And we've worked hard as services to react to this as quickly as possible and to ensure that you were all being provided with the best and most accurate advice as quickly as possible. An example of this was included the very last minute phone calls that we had to make to businesses last Friday who were planning to open in the early hours of Saturday morning when the government changed its guidance in the middle of Friday afternoon. And we know that things are changing all the time and government advice is updated on an almost daily basis. So we continue to do our best and we are committed to doing our best to keep you up to date with the most current information. But I must emphasise it's also important that you are doing everything you can to stay up to date and that you respond as quickly as possible to new guidance. We all need to work together to keep the virus at bay and protect public health. The consequences of not achieving this can be catastrophic for your business, our local area and the country, especially if we start to see infection rates increase. We've also published our 10 tips to have a great time and stay safe. And hopefully you've all seen that. And it's important that we work together to make sure that all our staff and customers are all reminded that we are still managing the impact of a pandemic and we are still working together to avoid a further lockdown or infection spike. But this doesn't mean that we're the fun police, but it does mean that we need to do things differently and safely working together. We've been working with you to help you implement different ways of working. And this is including things like the greater use of outdoor space with removable tables and chairs. And our licensing team has worked with many businesses already, and we are open and continuing to get inquiries about this to help on any additional planning and licensing needed for these pavement cafes. Social distancing and hand cleanliness remain absolutely key to managing safety, and we've worked to support businesses to implement this effectively, both for their staff and for their customers. The Food Safety and Environmental Health team have also been helping support businesses implementing safe practices in their kitchens. To manage all of the traditional food hygiene matters that haven't gone anywhere, they are still a requirement, alongside the new requirements of social distancing, personal protective equipment, enhanced cleanliness, Legionella issues, and the management of stock following any prolonged close down period. So whilst there's a lot of advice available to us all in managing our business through the pandemic, we also are acutely aware that every business is individual and will need to develop its own safe way of working. And today's webinar is just one of those ways that we're offering to support you. The public protection teams and business support services are all available to you to make direct contact to discuss your specific concerns and needs. And I'd really encourage you to take us up on that offer. So please contact us if you're unsure about anything. Our focus is on helping you to put the right measures in place to protect yourself, your staff, your customers, and the wider community from the virus. And we must all accept that safety now must come first.
Thanks, Sue. That was really helpful. And just to pick up maybe in a bit more detail on one of the points you raised around planning and licensing. So I think many people will be aware of some of the active travel measures, as we call it, that we've put in town to help change the way the centre feels, provide more space for social distancing for businesses, but also improve cycling pedestrian access into the town. And some businesses, quite rightly, will want to take advantage of that so they can maximise the number of customers they serve and do so in a socially distanced way. And you made a comment around government guidance sort of not following quickly enough in terms of announcements that have been made, and that's probably one area where the government have asked councils to be flexible, as we would wish to do, but the changes to the legislation and regulations haven't followed in the same time frame. So you just want to cover that and a bit about the approach we're taking in relation to those types of issues.
Is that to me, Carl? Yeah.
That is to you, Sue.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think I mean, the active travel and the repurposing of the public realm space, we were, you know, there've been a lot of requirements or requests on what we can do, and we've looked quite proactively at how we can use that public space better to both keep people, pedestrians who are walking through that public space safe, but also to enhance the offer that businesses can make. So the requirement on licensing and planning is still there, because there needs to be a conversation. There needs to be plans put in place to actually manage that multi-purposed space. So we have had some concerns where the business has moved outwards from its premises without having those proper conversations, without understanding what the potential consequences are. And obviously we will move forward and have those conversations with them to try and manage that more effectively. But we are being very proactive on that balance of the business need, but also to protect the public safety and, you know, the multifunctional purpose of that public space.
Okay, that's helpful. And just one thing I think would be worth picking up. I think in recent times, what people have seen is what on the one hand appears to be a return to normality, and people's behaviours shifting and changing, the impact that has. So, I mean, Rachel, would it be useful from a public health perspective to cover off how important these measures still are?
Yes, absolutely, Carl. And I think, I don't know if any of you've seen this, but I did a press release yesterday about the rates of infection in Kirklees. As of last week's data, we are the 4th highest local authority in the country, essentially. So that is obviously concerning. We've got access to postcode level data, and we are analysing that now to see whether this is across the whole borough or whether this is in specific areas. But in either event, this means that we are going to be challenged quite a lot in terms of the measures we are taking to protect our population and get that infection rate down. I think it's quite a challenge when the messages are quite contradictory sometimes, because you feel like we've gone past the peak, that we're now in a situation where we're coming out of lockdown, and yet you see these infection rates creeping up. For me, I think the really important thing is, if people have symptoms, they need to self-isolate and they need to get tested. Getting tested now is pretty straightforward. You can log onto a portal, get tested, and you get the result fairly quickly. And you can get tested in multiple different ways. So that's absolutely key. If you are social distancing, and if you are washing your hands, and if you are social distancing of 2 meters ideally, but 1+ if you've got those additional measures, then you can be assured that you're doing the best to protect yourself and your more vulnerable contacts. I think what I've seen a couple of times is I've noticed people shaking hands in the street for people that they haven't seen for a while. And it's such an ingrained behaviour, I think, for all of us, that we have our normal rituals of how we greet people, but it's remembering all the time that this is not going back to normal. That cannot be how we behave, because that is a contact, and that means that if you have the virus, you are passing that on. So I'm going to be keeping an weekly update on the figures, which, you know, we happily publish through whatever mechanism we've got in terms of liaising with businesses, so that you know. But it will mean that unless we're doing enough to mitigate that, you do then potentially have a risk of more serious mitigation measures going forward. And if we want to support our district, and Sue's obviously covered this in terms of not only individual businesses but the broader economy, then we all need to play our part in trying to keep that infection rate down.
That's really helpful, thanks. And I'd like to bring yourself in, Councillor McBride, around. Some people will be listening to this and thinking that some of the grand plans that the council had for investing and taking town centres forward have been put on the back burner pending COVID, and that hasn't been the case at all. So it might be useful to sort of outline some of the key things that are moving forward in Huddersfield and Dewsbury.
They most certainly haven't been put on the back burner. In fact, it's quite remarkable the number of things that are coming forward. Just road schemes alone, there is the major link between the bus station and the rail station. Significant development. There's New Street, about £5 million going to be invested there. You've got a link between the area which is in and around the university, spreading out ultimately to Lockwood, going in one direction and then onto Manchester Road. So two arms of a link. Then we've got Crosschurch Street. So I think that's a £4 million scheme to change the character of that. And then, of course, there's the link to Leeds Road. That's an £8 million scheme. Put together, it's about £50 million of investment, which is going to take place over a period of about 9 to 16 months. That's unprecedented. I've never known in my lifetime that amount of investment, broadly speaking, at the same time. This should transform the town. This is road schemes alone, let alone the measures relating to the George Hotel, which of course is a major boost to us. The fact that we've got the hotel, the fact that we, it's going to be the museum for the rugby league, or carry on its tradition of representing that. These are very significant developments, and we've got other things which are in the pipeline. At the bottom of the road leading down Northumberland Street, leading down to the former Tesco site, there are really important developments taking place there. Adjacent to Northumberland Street, of course, is the market, the open market, and plans are well underway to develop that, which will be again transformed. So if you put together the range of these things and the amount that is going to be spent on the railway station by Network Rail, it's a massive programme of investment over a relatively short period of time, which will change the character of Huddersfield. Now, there is a problem with the fact that in town centres, there is no guarantee that town centres are going to be restored to what they once were. But if anything could do anything to retain the best of what was and re-inject some investment to create a new character for the centre of the town, this is, well, the ideal model. And I can see these things gathering momentum and progressing at just the right time to create a sense of confidence when people, I think, have felt down the fact that nothing very much is happening, as the towns have only slowly opened up. And I think that's been right, that there hasn't been just suddenly a transformation. It would have been quite dangerous if it had. There's been a tentative, gradual approach to opening the town up. And I think this is coinciding with the investment programme that Kirklees is engaged in. And I think gradually we'll see the town becoming more confident and developing, partly because of the initiatives that are taking place, the investment from outside. And I think the partnership with Matthew talked at length about the bid group of business. In fact, we're working with them so that it isn't just a Kirklees scheme, it's all of our scheme, it's all of the people of Kirklees trying to benefit from the developments that are taking place. And it's a shared programme and with shared objectives. So I'm really pleased to see all this coming together.
Thanks. That's really helpful, and I think gives a bit of a flavour of the. Not only have we not stopped and paused, I think we've accelerated in some areas to bring some of these things forward. And I think some people listening will have heard obviously the concerns around council budgets and what that means. But in terms of the council's capital investment programme, we're very much pressing ahead with the commitments we've made. So I hope that gives people confidence that town centres is still very much at the top of the council's agenda, and we're wanting to invest in development going forward. We've had a question come through from a listener around if a customer contacts them telling them they've tested COVID positive, what should they do and who should they call? Rachel? Can you field that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important that you would call our environmental health teams, our public protection teams, and we can just give you the advice about what to do. When you've got 2 or more cases, that is technically classed as an outbreak. It's nothing to be, I suppose, fearful of. It's just the term that we use. So we would always advise in that situation to contact Public Health England. But if you've got contacts with the local authority, you know that team, I would talk to them and they will advise you if we need to bring Public Health England in, what we need to do, and we can between us work together to give you whatever advice you need. I think when Sue was talking about the level of support we've been trying to give, we have infection prevention and control nurses that can give you advice in terms of businesses and how you're operating and whether there are any. So we do work really collaboratively, and what Public Health England do is they can check whether the positive case that you've been contacted by appears then on our test and trace system, and just close the loop on that, because that will be where the contact tracing kicks in.
Great, that's really helpful. Matthew, just do you want to give us a bit more of a flavour about how people find out about the app and shop local, and the sort of street ambassadors program? That'd be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think from a business point of view, the Loyal 3 app, that's very much say if you've got some current deals. So if you're a coffee shop and you've got maybe buy 9 coffees and get the 10 free, you can easily adapt that onto an online platform that's in people's hands on the smartphone, and you can very much make a new deal, if you like, within there. So if you've got a new deal that you want to have in-house, a loyalty scheme in your actual shop, or if you want to put one on digitally, you can do that too. It's also got interactive trails on there that will naturally, hopefully when we come out the other side of this, we might have a Christmas lights trail or a Halloween trail or trails around that. But we've also got a rail ale trail, a music trail, all things to celebrate the town centre of Huddersfield and our community and heritage. I think the ways in which people can get involved is every business within the town will have a dedicated street ambassador. So they'll be popping in over the next month or so to hand some literature out, give the information, or they can very much get involved directly to the bid team within the office. I'm sure people will be able to get the email addresses off the website. And I suppose the Hello Huddersfield destination website that we're unveiling, that's very much about celebrating everything that Huddersfield is about and what it stands for. And for me, one of the things that Huddersfield really stands for is the people that are within it. There's a real kind of grit, there's a real determination. We want to celebrate that through Hello Huddersfield. So if there's anybody out there, I think one of the first businesses that were highlighted this week in a kind of interaction called My Huddersfield. We celebrated Hult's Wine Bar. So there was Rob Hult on there. He gave his story, told us his journey, where he's come to and what he loves about Huddersfield. So if there's any businesses out there that want to get involved, they just need to get in touch with the bid team, and we'll celebrate those businesses and communities in whichever way we can.
That's great, thank you. And I know we've focused thus far, I think, largely on Huddersfield, so I thought it'd be useful to just maybe cover off some of the things we're doing in other village centres. So we committed a budget of £10 million towards supporting other town and village centres across the borough and making them more vibrant. So whilst we've committed significant amounts of money to Huddersfield and Dewsbury, so the blueprints for both towns and the projects, some of which Councillor McBride covered, that we're committing to, we're now turning our attention as well to what we were going to do in some of those other centres. So particularly, I think the next round of focus will be Batley, Cleckheaton and Home Firth as three decent centres that actually have a vibrant economy, a vibrant nightlife, and wanting to support those. So in Home Firth, we're moving forward with a scheme for the centre of Home Firth in terms of public realm and traffic improvements. I know we've got some environmental works planned there. And we've got a programme called Growing Seeds, which some people that are listening in might have heard of. And that's about putting some interventions in our town centres that help change the way the place feels. So certainly for things like putting in what we've called rainbow rivers, where we link streets with multicoloured ribbons and coverings and provide a real different feel to the place. Art installations and sculpture trails around the centres, public displays, a whole range of things like that, to encourage people to come and dwell and enjoy the spaces within the town centres, but again trying to do so in a safe, socially distanced way. So whilst we've rolled those out, and we're rolling those out in Huddersfield and Dewsbury, intention is we will also do Batley, Cleckheaton, Holmfirth and other areas as well, as part of a rolling programme to support our other towns and villages. And whilst the advice we've given thus far is it's applicable to everywhere in the borough, so it's not Huddersfield or Dewsbury advice. If you're a business or a restaurant in Honley or Slough or any other centres, then we want to hear from you and we want to work with you just the same. When the hospitality businesses opened at the weekend, we didn't just deploy staff in Huddersfield and Dewsbury. We travelled out to some of our other centres and tried to speak to businesses there as well. So I wouldn't want people to think this is just a sort of a Huddersfield-centric approach. It clearly is across the borough, but Huddersfield and Dewsbury are our principal towns. So as you'd expect, a lot of the discussion and focus is on those particular areas. Okay, I'm just looking to see if we've got any further questions that have come through. So I think at the moment that's no one has put any additional questions through at the moment. So while we'll just wait and see if any further ones come through, I just wondered whether, whilst we're doing that, whether there's any final thoughts that the panel members want to add. So perhaps I could start with you, Councillor McBride.
I think what surprised me is the behaviour of the public as we opened up. I think there was a real fear that people might behave badly and then we'd be locked down again and so on. People have behaved very moderately, very sensibly, and there's been a gradual approach to opening up. So we will truly get the benefits. But the instant impact is not going to be a feeling that, well, everything's back to normal. It's a slow, progressive opening up. And I think this is the right way to do it, both from a public health point of view and from an economic point of view, because then it can be developed and sustained and maintained. And I'm so pleased to see the way things have worked out so far, and the fact that we have worked so well with other partners, other parts of the public sector, and very definitely the private sector. Matthew's work sort of is indicative of how Kirklees have worked with private business. That combination is very powerful. However, we're all aware that the challenge to town centres is immense. We know that they can't be exactly the same as they were before, so the challenge is enormous. That's the reason we have put so much time and money and investment into the future of our towns, knowing that if we don't make that commitment and investment to the future, in the future of our towns, nobody else will. And so it's critical. It's a partnership of our interest, the private sector's interest, and the total population of Kirklees. We do honestly believe our approach is right, that we're working with the right partners. We're not working in an arrogant way, presuming that the council knows it all and so on. Yes, it knows a lot, it's contributed a lot, working with others in the private sector and other parts of the public sector. I think it's been a joy to see things so far, and we must keep hopeful that this is the formula for success for the future.
Great, that's really helpful. So Matthew, just some words, but one thing I think might be useful for you to cover is, I suppose, the conduit that the bid can be between our sort of services and businesses on the ground, and how that works as a sort of two-way process. Yeah,
absolutely, and I think it's pretty much to reiterate what Councillor McBride said. He kind of took the words out of my mouth in a certain way, where it's very much, it's been a real partnership approach. Things have been tough, things are going to still be tough, but I think all of us together, we can really achieve a lot if we all work together. I think one of the really positive things as well is, yourself and Carl and I, we've had conversations where there's businesses have come out and, you know, maybe disagreed with some of the actions, but you've really been flexible. So I'd encourage businesses to kind of not suffer in silence and contact us, whether it's about public health, whether it's about another issue on the streets. We're very much here to listen and work together. And I think, yeah, just finally, as you mentioned, Carl, there, I suppose a bid is very much brought into place to be separate to a local authority, adding additionality to what the local authority and the organisations such as the police already deliver, but it's very much a joined up approach and very much a partnership. We've got to work with you guys to know what your baseline agreements are, so we can add that additionality to make our town an even better place.
That's great. Thank you, Matthew. An issue that's just arisen whilst you've been talking that I think is probably worth us quickly covering is around off sales of alcohol. So there've been some discussions around relaxing the regulations to allow businesses to sell effectively take alcohol takeaway, and I think concerns about whether that would lead to antisocial behaviour outside establishments. So I think for businesses that are thinking that might be a viable route for them, we're still waiting for the government advice to come through. So before you decide to do that, please have a chat with our licensing colleagues, but also keep an eye on the council's web pages, and we'll provide the up-to-date guidance and information that when it comes out. And I think, as with pavement licenses and cafes, obviously we'd be look to try and be as flexible as we can and support businesses to continue to trade in a socially distanced way. Sue, any final thoughts from you?
I think really, I completely endorse what both Councillor McBride and Matthew have said around, the success of the first weekend. And I think there was some trepidation about what that first weekend of opening was going to be like. And I think, I don't know whether I dare say it, but probably the weather helped us a little in that it wasn't as pleasant an evening on Saturday night as many of the weekends that we've had previously. But I think it is that gradual progression towards what is going to be a new normal, but that new normal is absolutely not what we used to have. It is still social distancing. It is still, washing your hands for the full 20 seconds as often as you possibly can. And it's almost like it feels like it's such old news. It's not current. It absolutely is current. It is the best advice. And we all take that personal responsibility to do that. But we need to create those circumstances, those situations to enable our customers and our staff to do that as well. And the other thing that I would just emphasise is that guidance and updates are happening daily, and we all need to keep abreast of that. And it's your responsibility as businesses as well as our responsibility as a council to make sure that we are as up to date as we possibly can be, but obviously working with each other to make this real. We really want to avoid the situation where we have to do things to businesses. We would much rather be working with you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sue. Rachel, anything you want to add in summary from your area?
Yeah, I think just to sort of, I suppose one of the ways we're going to get that infection rate down is that we are all being really consistent with the messages that we're giving. So I'm really keen on how we can work with businesses in terms of their role as ambassadors within the community, and the fact that they will come across a number of people, and how we can help you to help spread the right messages so that actually we do tackle this head on. Because I think that for me, if we can all be consistent about what we're saying, because the guidance can sometimes be a little confusing, it'd be really, really helpful if we have those stock messages. So I'd be really keen to work with you going forward on how we can all work together on getting those key messages out.
Great, thanks, Rachel. So just a final sort of couple of comments from me, and then I think we'll wrap up. So we've heard about the first weekend and the trepidation. This weekend the weather looks better, so we would hope that people would come out, behave responsibly, and continue to follow the guidance. And we're really grateful for the really positive way that businesses have worked with us to do that on the whole, and the behaviour of people that have come out to enjoy themselves as well. So I think we've all been really pleased with how the communities have come together and done that, and that's something we want to continue with. So encourage people to do that this weekend, to stay safe, to enjoy themselves and support town centre businesses where they can. And also, just as a final thought, as a council, we are here to help you. We're not here to enforce and hinder. We're here to support and help you develop and grow as businesses. That's our role. So please do contact us. Contact us proactively before you want to do something, rather than try and resolve it after the event. We'll provide all the contact details on the website. If you want to contact us individually, just to remind you, I'm Carl Battersby. I'm the Strategic Director for Economy and Infrastructure, so I cover planning, regeneration, property, licensing, a range of things. Sue Proctor covers licensing and regulation and covers pretty much all the council's frontline services. Rachel covers public health, but also covers a massive range of council corporate functions as well. Councillor Peter McBride is the deputy leader of the council and covers the planning and regeneration functions of the council. And Matthew obviously is the bid manager who supports all the businesses in Huddersfield Town Centre, and we're all here to help and support you. So thanks for tuning in today. Thanks very much for your questions. Take care. Stay safe. Goodbye.
Thank you.